Hello, everybody. Welcome. I want to say hi. I hope you're having a wonderful evening. My name is Stephanie Klixbull. I'm going to be our moderator today. Just a little bit about me. I'm over in Pennsylvania in the United States, actually at Penn State University. I am an educator that has centered her career around STEM education and inspiring the youth in inventing and STEM, and now over at Penn State as an elementary STEM specialist. But enough about me. We really want to talk about the star of our show today. All right, and she's right over here next to me on the screen. This is Gitanjali Rao. If anybody knows, have read her bio, she is amazing and inspiring. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to give a brief description about her, and then we're going to get right into it with some questions. And then if you notice, there is a chat box right by you that you can actually ask questions today. And at the very end, we're going to save time for some Q&A. So enough about, directions, even though us teachers love to give those. I'm going to start this bio about this wonderful young aspiring scientist right next to me. And you know what? Actually, I'll start off about how old she is. She is 19 years old and inventing, being a scientist, author, speaker, active promoter of STEM worldwide. I mean, the list goes on. Gitanjali was recognized as America's top young scientist and received an EPA Presidential Award for her patent invention that we're actually going to be talking about today. And not only that, she actually has two others. So if you're doing your math right, she has three so far under her belt that she has helped invent and design. And in 2019, she was honored as one of Forbes 30 under 30 in science for addressing actually environmental issues in her area. And on top of that, I know we're going to keep on going with this award list. She was at times named as top young inventor and kid of the year. She also, during her free time, has inspired over 100,000 students, across 48 countries with inspiring talks and workshops that you can actually look forward to in case you get interested after today. And she is the author of two books, which both are about STEM education for educators and students aspiring to invent. Now, I want to get to one of our first questions because I know that we want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A. And she is currently a student at MIT, or Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And we were able to meet a few weeks back, and we actually found out we had a lot in common. Particularly, I'm on the education side, and she is on the inventor scientist side. But as an educator, Gitanjali, you really inspired me to continue my path when we were talking, because you definitely were talking about as a young child being inspired. And that was kind of like the first catalyst and spark moment that started your career and really your whole life. So you became an inventor at such a young age. And can you share that moment that you told me to the whole group that inspired you to really start solving problems through invention?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Stephanie, for that fantastic introduction. Every time I hear it, I struggle to figure out how I've managed to do so much in my 19 years of living. But I managed to one up myself every single day. So, but yeah, thank you so much. And I feel like answering that question is kind of difficult, mainly because it's really hard to pinpoint what starts a journey at the ripe old age of 3 or 4 years old, when I don't think anyone remembers their life at that age. But I really do think my mind has always looked at the world in a scientific approach. I grew up playing with science kits instead of Barbie dream houses, because that's what I would get for my birthday, and that's what I would get for Christmas. And I would make a whole thing out of it. And I think, as I started running out of experiments, I started to build my own, and I started to look at the way in which that would apply to the world at large as well. And so as I started to get older, maybe 9 or 10 years old, I looked at problems in my community and almost intuitively I would be able to identify and come up with solutions. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint where all of that started, but instead it kind of just turned into a mindset. And I have a little brother who's 12 years old who is basically exactly the same way. And I think the bigger thing behind all of this was kind of this overarching motivation and drive of recognizing how many kids across the world were facing problems that I would never ever face. And so I would like to say that every kind of step of my journey has and will continue to start with this theme of empathy, right? Putting myself in other people's shoes and recognizing that these are problems that exist. And I was never the type of person to sit back and kind of watch it happen because I was taught not to in this household.
And you actually kind of led us on to my second question, which is talking about your first invention, and thinking about environmental issues and how you said about empathy and thinking about others. I wanted to take some time for you to talk about that first invention, but in particular, what drove you to invent, particularly about lead contamination. I mean, what was going on? Because I'm sure we have some people right now listening that may not know what happened to your state or especially your area that kind of led you into this idea. So if you don't mind telling us about it and what kind of helped you inspire to invent that.
Yeah, I didn't even live in Flint, Michigan. I wasn't even remotely close to it. But I grew up listening to the news every time we would eat dinner. It was just my dad would always play it in the background. And there were things that would catch my eye, and America is a pretty terrible place sometimes. And so there would be a new problem every single day. And one of the biggest ones that caught my eye was this whole issue of lead in drinking water, which seemed so foreign to me, right? Because I had grown up in this place where I always had clean water to drink. And I was quite literally drinking water at the dinner table when I was hearing about all these kids who were drinking a poison every single day. Because they had no other option, right? And I quickly kind of recognized that water was supposed to be a basic right. And that's when I kind of was like, is anyone going to do anything about this? And overall, this lead and water issue has started, like, didn't even start then. It's been going on since. And, Flint is still dealing with unsafe drinking water. And I think my bigger goal behind all of this was looking at how would I be able to help people with a lack of knowledge of contamination, right? We have a lot of opportunities to prevent for lead in drinking water, and we have a lot of opportunities to treat it. But there's that middle part of people not knowing what's in their water and people not knowing when it's safe to drink that I kind of wanted to approach. And so that's kind of where my device for lead started. And, I can elaborate more on that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, and that continues, do you mind telling
Yeah.
us what it's called, or
Mhm.
was it, when did you first showcase it? Was it one of those like a science fair thing, or did you tell your parents? I mean, how did it become from an idea to a prototype?
Yeah, it was actually a little bit of a random process because quite literally my first couple of ideas were built with like my dad's Apple Watch box, like cardboard Apple Watch box with like wires poking out of it, and like a picture taped onto the front of it. And I took this silly little idea and I made a silly little 2-minute video about it. And I applied to this competition called the Young Scientist Challenge because I saw this prize fund of $25,000, and any 10-year-old is going to want $25,000. And I ended up going to the finals and taking home the money, and then not really knowing what to do with it, but applying it back into my work and really turning it into a product that I was proud of. But after kind of that 2-minute video, I got selected as a finalist. But something that was kind of more important than the money was I got paired with this mentor. Her name was Dr. Kathleen Schaefer, still one of my biggest mentors to this day. She kind of worked with me for 4 months, and this is part of the challenge. And she worked with me for 4 months and kind of handheld me through the process of bringing an idea from an idea to reality. And I learned how to code for the first time. I learned how to 3D model for the first time. I learned what a nanotube was for the first time. And all of this, I was quite literally sitting down and doing at the age of 11 just by watching YouTube videos online. I was just thinking back to this yesterday, and I was like, how did I do this without ChatGPT? I sat there and did all of this from scratch. it really shows you how brains have changed over the years too. But I was able to kind of build a prototype of this lead solution that was working, and I took it to this competition and I won the money. And with that money, I applied for a patent and spent some more time in the lab. But then also, I'm currently in partnership with a mass manufacturing company who's helping to scale this, test it further, make sure there's no holes in the theory itself, and then field test it in Flint, Michigan, and places like that so that they can start knowing what's in their water. And we're also getting more accurate data points as we continue with this.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's great to know even years later that
Yeah.
this prototype, well, not really a prototype anymore, but this product that you've created to help others is still continuing and it's still growing. And, that's amazing to hear. And coming from an educator who loves to teach the youth about inventing and continuing to invent things, because we all know the first design doesn't always work out. There's always bugs and how to fix it, and how to make it a better prototype or to remodel. And it sounds like that happened to you, but you also had a great model to help you and a person to help you along the way. So that's great to hear. And speaking about inventing, I definitely want to give time, of course, to the other two. So, in particular, I wanted to bring up your work with UNICEF and cyberbullying prevention program that you helped develop, and that is more on the algorithm and coding technology side of things. So I'm going to pivot from our actual prototype in person that you can hold and actually talk about something that was on the technology side that you helped invent. Do you mind telling the audience about it and what kind of inspired you to create this program and work with UNICEF?
Yeah, absolutely. So the tool is called Kindly. It started out as this idea of wanting to create a spell check for cyberbullying, right? And the reason for that is I grew up in many different states, as you know, but I went to 7 different schools during 12 years of going to high or elementary, middle, high school. And every new place, you would experience new people, and you would experience new bullies, and you would have to do it all over again. And something else that I kind of realized is it was getting to a point, when people started getting phones where standing up wasn't enough, right? And there were times when you couldn't even recognize when it was cyberbullying. You know, you couldn't even see it happening because someone was hiding behind a phone. And I moved to Colorado, and I have lived in this place for so long, but Colorado actually has the highest rate of teenage suicides. And that was a huge, huge thing for me, especially coming from a school that, in 2019 faced a school shooting because of the original cause of cyberbullying. I knew that this was something that I wanted to be able to approach, and I wanted to be able to kind of take my own look at. And so the goal of Kindly was to create a tool that was developed by a teenager for a teenager, right? And when Kindly was developed, it was when artificial intelligence and natural language understanding and processing was just on the rise, right? And so there weren't too many tools to be able to build these engines online. No one really knew what NLU and NLP was, but I took my first steps into it, and I made this really, really, really rough draft version of a tool called Kindly that essentially uses a variety of different intents to categorize a bunch of words and phrases into, and then utilize that to train its own algorithm, and then essentially be able to say, like, hey, this is maybe isn't the nicest thing to say, like, probably don't send this, but it doesn't actively stop you from sending anything. And it's all leveraged off of research that says it only takes 7 seconds for a teenager to want to unsend something that they sent. And I've faced that, I've faced those 7 seconds where I'm like, I wish I could unsend this. And I'm sure many other people have. And so that's exactly why I built it. And I, kept it going for a couple of years. And then I got a call from UNICEF, and they're like, hey, we love your idea. And at this point, I'd been working with UNICEF with my work with lead and things like that as well. And my point of contact there was like, hey, we love this idea. I've gotten some requests about turning this into one of our digital public goods, because UNICEF is huge on online safety, right? And so after that, Kindly kind of went above and beyond just a tool and turned into more of kind of this mission. And so alongside this tool, we've taken the time to really, really spread the word on Online Internet Safety Day, but also create more of a bigger mission out of it to help people realize that they're kind of not alone in this process as well. And at the same time, Kindly is now built as an API, which means it can be integrated with a variety of different front ends. So we are already in conversation, or it's already implemented in Slack, Discord, Google Classroom. It's a Chrome extension. You should be able to send emails. And right now, I'm in the process of kind of working with Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, other tools that we know and love, to see if we'd be able to implement it as kind of an on and off switch within the settings section as well. And so it's a work in progress, but kind of the best part about Kindly is on its website and on its landing page, anyone can go in and trade the engine. And that essentially allows everyone to feel like they're a part of the solution, which was kind of the goal of both me and UNICEF once we really took this out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, a few weeks back, we were able to, talk to each other, and it's interesting. I grew up in the state of Colorado as well, different generation, but I was in that generation with one of the first, unfortunate school bullying issues that, became very huge on media and news. And there was no such thing as, Kindly or some kind of way to have that kind of 7 seconds of thinking, like, is this nice? Is it not? Maybe I should rephrase this, or maybe I shouldn't do this at all. And so it's really amazing to hear that you've created for your generation and other generations a way to basically have like a virtual friend, where you wish you had one at that moment to say, is this something that's okay? Or am I going to hurt someone's feelings? How do I rephrase this? So I think that's wonderful. And the fact that it's available on so many different platforms makes it easily accessible. So that's really great. And I'm glad to once hear about that continuation with UNICEF. And I can't, hopefully I can help with the youth when I hang out with my students to let them know if they ever need it, they've got a virtual friend. Talking about the third invention, and particularly design, I want to, give a time frame here, and, you please go ahead and explain to our audience, first was the lead tool, and then was it second being Kindly, and then was it the third, or I'm just trying to think about age here. Yes. So if you don't mind telling us what age for all three.
Built Kindly I built Tethys when I was 11. And then when I turned 14 or 15, I built my second tool, which is kind of my work with prescription opioid addiction and kind of building a clinical testing tool for it. And I want to say 16 is when I started working on Kindly, when I was 16. So maybe earlier, probably earlier.
So all within like a 4 to 5 year span.
Yeah, it was quick. It was quick turnaround.
No, that's very impressive. I know some inventors who their work is just on one thing, but what I love about you is that you are continuing all three still. You haven't, said, oh, I forgot, this one's out and gone. It sounds like you're continuing the work to always involve that product or involve that model and, make it grow still, which is aspiring, because I think a lot of people think when it comes to inventing, all right, I invented it. I may have patented it, or it may have become a product. I'm now done. And that is not you at all. It sounds like all three are continuing to help with issues in local communities and nationally. So, props to you. That's amazing. Yeah. And, I also want to talk about your books, because not only have you spent the last 4 to 5 years inventing, but you've also written about inventing and hopefully inspiring others through reading. And it's not just the youth, you're also wanting to inspire educators to help promote inventing and STEM education in the classroom. So if you don't mind telling us about both books, in particular, the description between both, and, what inspired you to become an author.
Yeah, I mean, the inspiration was COVID. I got really bored. And I was like, my parents think I'm crazy. They were like, oh, they're like, you most other kids pick up a hobby, you can just write a book, I guess. But I essentially started out because during COVID, my workshops kind of ramped up because people kind of recognized the idea of Zoom existed, which again, I could do a whole nother hour about how it took us an entire pandemic to go online. But I think I started running more and more of these workshops. And as I started doing this, and at this point, I was doing 2 or 3 per day, right after school. And as I was doing this, there were little tips and tricks that I would kind of write down on a Google Doc. That Google Doc ended up being 45 pages long within the first 2 months of doing this because it was just like an exact guide of how I wanted to run these things, like what I wanted to gain out of it. And after that, I kind of was like, I can't really work with every single kid across the world. What if I just turned this into a book, right? And it was halfway there. And I was like, so great, less work for me. And so I kind of just kept writing, and that kind of conjured into my first book, which is called A Young Innovator's Guide to STEM. And essentially what it does is it highlights my 5-step process to what innovation really is. And the goal of this one is I saw a lot of books about how to build an idea, and I saw a lot of books about how to make money, but nothing kind of bridging that gap. And so that's the easiest way that I like to explain it. And then in this book, I obviously didn't want it to be a standalone book with like tips and tricks in this 5-step process. So I included lesson plans and kind of worksheets for teachers to be able to hand out to students as well, to be able to kind of turn it into a 5-week curriculum or 5-day curriculum. Since that's essentially the goal of what I want it to be. My long-term goal for any and all of this is to kind of start a K through 12 education system, which is able to seamlessly involve innovation and problem solving just as we do any other kind of skills that we do in a classroom, right? Because I think it's just as equally important as a math test that we're taking in middle school. And so that's kind of where the first book came from. And I got a lot of great feedback about that. A lot of teachers using it, a lot of students using it, a lot of parents using it as well. And that's kind of what hit me the most. These people have kind of grown up alongside me, so why don't I just write another book? Because again, I got bored. And so my next book kind of came from my own personal experience of managing kind of lifelong dreams and ambitions and goals with the short term, for lack of better word, like pain of college applications, right? And I'd never kind of seen a college applications book written from a perspective of someone who's actually applying to college. Most of them are parents or teachers or counselors or admissions officers at some of these insane Ivy Leagues, right? And I got very lucky to have gotten into a school that I really, really wanted to go to for my entire life. But apart from that, it is painful sitting there writing personal statements and figuring out how to kind of plan out your 4 years of high school to set yourself up for success. And so I kind of wrote like a no nonsense guide towards that, right? Like, how do you kind of balance the classes that you take? Like, what does competing really look like? What does time management look like? How do you create a healthy relationship with yourself and managing school and managing all these things that you want to do? What does an extracurricular look like, right? Like, what are schools looking for? How do you build a well-rounded profile? So all of these things, but not necessarily for stopping it at just getting into college and then being done, but how do you continue beyond that, right? And how do you get to a place that's the place for you. So I like to say the big punchline on this book is that college isn't a prize to be won, but it's a match to be made. And I really, really try to dig into that. And I really, really try to explain that because, college is never the end all be all. And I still don't believe that to this day. I feel like I'll probably do much, much more after college, and I'll probably be hopefully be able to devote more of my time to these other things that I'm passionate about after I get a degree. So I don't know. I think that's kind of what my goal was behind why I wrote that book, is because people don't recognize that they're not alone in this entire process of applying. Everyone does this. Everyone does it, but no one really talks about how hard it is. So.
And I love how your personality is very much not putting yourself in one box and saying, this is what I am. I am just an inventor. I mean, clearly your young career, because you've got a while to go, but you're an author, you're a presenter, you are a scientist, you're an inventor. And even when we talked a few weeks ago, I mean, you were telling me some other things that, nonchalantly But really, I mean, as aspiring, you're like, oh yeah, I also have my pilot license because I just wanted to see if that was something I wanted to be or be part of or try. And I love that, you're not just saying, this is my one career, this is what I'm going to achieve, and that's it. And even as you talk right now, you're continuing your education, always being a lifelong learner. I feel like we definitely share that passion of continuing education because I feel the same way too about things. I'm like, oh, I'm done with that and I can move on. And I put that self nicely in a box. And that's not how life is. And I think that's really inspiring to tell, hopefully, young audience members that are listening today that don't put yourself in one box. Keep everything open and try different things. You never know, and it's okay to fail and succeed and try and redoing things. So that's really inspiring, hopefully, for some of our listeners. And I know we talked a bit about your past, and now we're kind of moving to your current and what's going on now. We talked about you being a student currently at MIT, and if you could take the time right now to explain what kind of degree you're getting and what are you hoping and what do you enjoy about MIT, or have you joined any clubs or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying earlier about like, this is a time to like try new things and like do whatever you want. Well, obviously I 100% agree. And I think part of it is also just because I literally don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I feel like that's like I do want to be transparent and open about that because it is so normal, right? And people have been telling me, you wake up one day, you find your passion, you know exactly what you want to do with your life. I really could see my life going in 15 different directions right now, and I don't know. I'm choosing not to be anxious about it because why be anxious when you can be excited about it. Um, but yeah, I guess yes, I am studying at MIT. I'm going to my junior year this upcoming weekend. I am currently studying bioengineering and minoring in business management. And yes, I love the school, and I'm involved in a lot on campus. I'm one of the co-directors of one of our entrepreneurship clubs on campus called Start Labs. I'm also one of the co-presidents of our South Asian Association for Students, which has been an insane experience. I'm involved in a student-run kind of coffee-based like lab on campus called Latte Lab. Our main goal is to create a student-run coffee shop on campus, which I think is really cool. I've worked there or I've kind of like contributed for the past year under their philanthropy segment. I focused on this tool called Beanback, which is essentially able to provide money to the farmers that grow the beans that we end up making coffee out of for the students. So it's a pretty awesome experience. And then on top of that, I'm involved in our sorority, Sigma Kappa, and I work with our new member education there as well. So a lot. I'm always doing a lot, but I always keep myself busy. I'm never at a lack of things to do on campus.
I mean, once again, I used to be a barista in a coffee shop when I was young in college. So I love coffee. And I love the bean back. That
Yeah,
is amazing because
thank
the
you.
farmers don't get,
I know.
a huge congrats. And they help everyone start their morning.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I love that.
For each cup of coffee, I believe like a farmer receives like 3 cents or something. Which is
Wow.
or
Wow.
which is insane. It's insane. Or not for
Yeah.
each cup. I think it's for like within a day's like brewing of coffee because they barely receive any money at all. So I don't know, but
Wow.
like even within we did a short pop-up. I think it was like an hour-long pop-up, and we donated about $250, and that's a month's worth of like supplies and food for him and his family. So in Honduras.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And now you're inspiring me after this talk, not only to get an afternoon latte downstairs in my kitchen, but also I'm gonna research more about that and
Yeah,
that
100%. It's
group.
it's
That's
really cool.
amazing.
It's
Yeah.
actually really cool, the work that MIT is doing as well. It's called MIT Latte Lab. You should check it out.
I will. Wow, that's amazing. And you did talk about being an author, and I think this kind of leads into this next question is inspiring the youth to invent and also still inspiring parents and teachers to foster that love. Something you also do on your, I say quote a lot, free time, but not when you're, studying. You are promoting STEM education and invention education through workshops. If you don't mind telling us a little bit currently about the workshops that you do, or that how people can get involved, because maybe after this conversation today, they might want to be inspired and, do one of those workshops. So if you don't mind talking about those.
Yeah, of course. So, over the past 6 or 7 years, I've been running these innovation workshops for students all across the world. I've worked with pre-K through college students, anywhere from 5 minutes to I've been working with schools for a semester long. And I've been able to I've worked with over 100,000 students at this point through these workshops. And it's less of a kind of on a weekly basis schedule, and it's more of a as and when requested, but kind of these workshops allow every student to end out with an idea as well as a process that they can use to take it into the real world, right? And I feel like if we're able to kind of sit down and pressure cook that within the time span of 5 minutes or a semester, there's 100,000 new budding ideas across the world if you think about it that way, which is really, really exciting. So for anybody who wants to get involved, my website is gitanjalirao.net, and there should be a little workshop sign up tab on top, and it'll allow you to kind of put in a request for your school, your organization, your clubs, your groups, anything like that as well. So you should definitely check it out. You should also shoot me an email as well. I workshops are always free of charge. You should never put money on education. That's what I say.
All right, I'm gonna ask a fun question
Yeah.
here, because I read 48 countries. I knew some of them have been in person and some of them have been, virtually. Has there been anywhere that you enjoyed traveling to, or maybe that was just different, or I hope maybe one day want to move there? I mean, I'm just inspired. That's a lot of countries. I feel like on my hand, I may have been to like 3 or 4. So
Our family's huge on traveling. I mean, I would say over half, or maybe like around half of those 48 were probably over Zoom. So it's not like I had the chance to kind of go explore, but I've definitely been to 25, 30 countries at this point. My favorite, oh, that's so hard. Um, I've been to Japan 5 times, and I love it more every time I go. And just I've been everywhere: Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, tiny little towns in Japan. Worked with preschoolers in Japan. I've worked with high schoolers who can't speak a word of English. I've done all of it there. I love Japan. I think that's probably one of my favorites. A close second I would be Egypt and Turkey. Both of those places were insane. I would go back any day. So I have a couple more coming up too. I I'm going to Taiwan in these next couple of months, which will be exciting. And then I'm also headed for vacation. I'm heading to Tunisia and Morocco. So that'll be exciting.
yeah, I mean, I'm inspired by that too. I mean, I love traveling, but I have not been to that many places. So,
My family's really prioritized traveling for me and my little brother since we were like born, quite literally. So we've always been out and about.
yeah, and it's an amazing way to see different perspectives and, different ways of seeing how people live.
Yeah.
So I think that's great, especially at a young age to be traveling like that. So we talked about your workshops and we talked about being at MIT. You've got about, I would say, 2 years till you graduate, correct? Yes,
Yep.
on that path. Okay. Um, what are you hoping for? I mean, I know you said you don't want to put yourself in a box, and it stresses you out a little bit to think about the future of where to go. But getting a degree in bioengineering, is there something you're hoping to go down that you would like to, let's say, your first steps into after college? Where are you hoping to achieve or go to?
Yeah, great question. I do want to pursue a master's, so I'm gonna go to school for a little longer. Um, but beyond that, I would one day really love to start a biotech company about some sort of problem that I'm passionate about. I have no idea which way that's gonna go. But hopefully I'm able to come up with something genius in these next 3 or 4 years. Recently, I've been kind of really passionate about genetic engineering and how its contributions to not only human health but also the environment, and how we're able to genetically engineer organisms to help detect for things and act as sensors. I think that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll take that for a spin, but who knows? I'm just trying to get through school right now. Maybe I'll graduate and then we'll decide.
Yeah, I understand. Probably that graduation part is pretty key to
Little
get done
steep.
first
Yep.
before you. Yeah. I'm gonna get to we've got some questions coming in, and I want to make sure we get to some of our audience questions, which I'm gonna answer here in a question. So I'm gonna give you one more from me, and then we're gonna do some Q&A from our audience members. And as a teacher, that's my job, and that's what I'm passionate for, is teaching others. And I'm hopeful, and I've had little moments where I've gotten a card, like a thank you card, or a student has come up to me and said, you really inspired me to continue science. And, it's a moment where you, as the educator, feel like I'm on the right path and I'm helping others, and this was right for me. Do you have a moment where, it could be that someone has come to you and said you've been really inspiring, or vice versa? Have you had someone in your life, like a teacher or a parent, that's really motivated you, and you've just been really thankful for having them, that they've inspired you to have this life that you've achieved at such a young age?
I mean, a little bit of both, obviously. I'll start with myself. My parents have been my number one supporter since day one. I was that kid that you name it, I did it. I probably did everything known to man when I was younger. My brother is like this too, but their only rule was like you had to try it once, and if you didn't like it, you could quit the next day. And that kind of allowed me to carve my own path. And I really owe them a lot for that, because I wouldn't have been able to figure out what I wanted to what I assume I want to do with my life so early, which is really exciting. I've also had incredible teachers. My freshman year physics teacher is the only reason I even remotely enjoy physics, and considered a physics minor for a really long time. And this is coming from someone who hated the subject. And I think that, if you're able to learn to like physics, then you can probably do anything in life. So I really owe a lot of my success to him. A lot of my perseverance and determination honestly does come from that class as well, because I sucked at physics. I was awful. I've gotten a lot better since, but yeah. And the vice versa, kind of speaking about students who have kind of come up to me and been like, oh, like, this really helped me out. I got a lot of feedback, obviously, a lot of positive feedback. I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of updates. I see a lot of these students kind of go out of their way and win these competitions with ideas that we've been working on in workshops and things, which is really encouraging. But at the same time, it's honestly the more little workshops that really do it for me. I worked with a group of girls in Afghanistan, and I had to do their workshop at 3 a.m. in the morning, because they don't have access, or they're not legally allowed to have science education there. And so they kind of have to hide to be able to even get on a Zoom call and learn about science in any way. I think that was like, it was obviously scary, but really empowering to kind of watch these girls with that much passion that they were willing to kind of put everything at risk for 30 minutes of my time. And I still work with the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. I've worked with over 200 kids there, and I've gotten close to many of them as well. But they walk 45 minutes every single day to be able to receive any form of education. They don't always have clean water. They didn't have a router for months and months, until I was able to kind of fundraise for them and get them routers and chairs and laptops, and now we have a little makerspace set up. But yeah, kind of all of these things combined have helped me recognize, how much of an impact this work truly does make. Apart from kind of like my biotech startup work, one day in the future, I would love to start up schools in some of these remote areas that I work in. Some of these kids have never seen a classroom before, and it's just like, thinking back to my education, it's just so unfair that these students have just as much passion as my friends and I did when we were younger, or arguably even more, and no way to kind of channel it, and no one really fostering it over there. So yeah, that's a I would say even longer term goal of mine, kind of a maybe after I retire and sit down and not think about science anymore kind of goal. But
Well, and I also want to say you don't suck at physics. I think everyone will say that physics is very hard. Coming from a science teacher, don't want to be frank, teach physics just because it's everywhere. It's
I don't think
everything.
I'll
It
ever
happens
understand
all the time.
kinematics. I just genuinely don't think I'll ever get it. But
It's a tough one. It definitely is. So, no, I appreciate, thank you for answering all those questions for me and for
yeah,
our audience members. And, I want to give enough time. So I do have a few questions here from our audience and I'm going to read them. And, let's just see how much time we have for that. So our first question is, do you keep track of your ideas? And if so, how do you manage them without feeling overwhelmed?
ooh, I do keep track of them. Um, not as not as much as I would like to, because I tend to kind of lose track of some ideas that I was like, "Oh, that's genius," and then I'll never be able to find it again. I used to have a notebook for a really long time, and then that became really outdated. Now I just write things on my notes app on my phone. But I do keep track of ideas, but more importantly, I keep track of technology, I would say. If I see something that really catches my eye, like something that's like life changing, something that I know I want to kind of work on in the future, I'll kind of just jot it down and come back to it later. I don't really have that many active projects, so it's not like I need like a really nice database of everything. But if I see something that catches my eye, I'll like jot it down and then maybe go back to it later.
Yeah, my office kind of makes fun of me. I love post-it notes. I love organizing my thought by color. And I have on the back of my wall just rows of different colors for thoughts, just so that if I ever need it one day, it's there. I don't get rid of it. So I love that you've used a notebook, but you use different tools, to keep track. That's a great way. Our second question here is, as a young inventor, how has your family supported your journey? I know we talked a little bit about that, but the second part of the question I really love, which is, what role do you think families can play in encouraging scientific curiosity at home without needing expensive resources?
Yeah, exactly what my parents did, I would say. I keep telling my mom to write a parenting book, and she just will not. But I think it would do great. But I think that the biggest role a family can play, and this is very cliche, but it's generally not getting in the way. I grew up with kind of no stereotypes behind me of what I needed to do when I got older, right? My parents really let me explore everything I wanted to do. A big part of it is I did so many like free little pop-ups and camps at the library. I used to be obsessed with this. Our library in Tennessee used to have this like little Lego camp that I went to for a week straight, where you would like build your own ideas out of Legos. I think that really jump started a lot for me. Like things like that, like little opportunities where when you're very young, being able to exercise your brain and your mind is, I think, what kind of allowed me to be where I am. And I think apart from that, a big thing that families and parents are able to do is encourage encourage kind of their kids to try new things, and never really restrict themselves with a box. You'll never meet like parents like my parents who were telling me as a middle schooler that like, oh yeah, like pack up your things, let's go to Japan so you can run a workshop because that's what you want to do, right? A lot of people think that and obviously you're a teacher, so I'm not saying don't go to school. It's important. It's important. Get good grades. I paid attention to my grades, but at the same time, again, school wasn't the end all be all. It wasn't always just about do your homework, go to class the next day. There was always something more, and they always encouraged me to do something more outside of it.
Yeah, I think what's interesting what you just said, and I can tell from what your response was with your parents is something. I have a 5-year-old, and very similar. I think in this generation, it's feeding a lot of my kid says, what do I do now? What can I do? Basically like, give me something to do. And I think as a teacher, as a parent, we feel like we have to give them something like a physical object or tell them, go do this. And really, I think what inspires inventing and building and making and designing is saying, use your imagination, which is free resource to really, do something on this time. You have this time. What do you want to do? Do you want to problem solve? Do you want to invent something? Do you want to make a story? And not just giving them something that could be expensive, but rather giving them imagination time to play is really important at a young age. And I think your parents definitely helped you guys with that in imagination time and, not using expensive kits per se, but really helping, that inspiration to imagine. And I think even to this age, you definitely still have that imagination perspective, which is amazing because you
Yeah.
keep on inventing and you keep on thinking things that have not been invented yet, which is wonderful. To our third question, can you share any tips for turning a science fair into a year-round innovation culture?
Yeah. A science fair project or a science fair itself? I'm trying to
I think a science fair, because you know how science fairs like kind of pop in and pop out. It's not
understand.
the whole
Yeah.
year, you know what I mean? So how do you have any suggestions about how to make that more of a year round?
Yeah, implement it into a classroom. That's kind of what I like to say a lot. I worked at the school in Wyoming for a semester, or 2 semesters actually, and our entire and it was a STEM class, and the entire kind of point of the STEM class is they would present their project at the end in something called an invention convention. But we went through this entire semester of just doing this, right? Of just brainstorming and then researching and brainstorming and researching and then picking a solution and then hating it and then going back to the beginning and doing it all over again. And all of these, I think it was like 10 kids in that class, and they all built 10 genuinely incredible ideas. One of the kids built a self-drawing pencil. One of the kids built a spacesuit, like a really compact spacesuit. And was in conversation with NASA about it. It was insane. One of the students built a robotic dog, like a robotic companion dog, which I thought it was again over a semester. This is like these were projects these students were working on, and it kind of allowed them, they had other classes to go to. But they were kind of be able to involve these other classes in the work that they were doing. In their English classes, they wrote their final reports about these projects that they were doing, and it was really interesting to see kind of this multidisciplinary concept kind of really come together and play in real life. And so I guess my biggest tip for turning it into kind of a year-round innovation culture is embedding problem solving and critical thinking just into your classes and into your concepts that you're teaching and things like that as well. And I think another big thing is encouraging and investing in competition. I think when you're able to encourage students to not necessarily compete against themselves, but apply for other competitions and challenges and take learning outside of a classroom, especially that coming from a teacher, it really, really encourages you to do that. Because, when you're hearing from a teacher that, hey, like this is a great idea, you should apply to this challenge with it, you're going to do it, right? And that's kind of what I experienced in 7th and 8th grade because I had some insane teachers who, really, really kind of motivated me and wanted me to see me do insane things outside of a classroom. I think that's really how you're able to bring innovation to life in an elementary or middle school.
I think that, yeah, as an educator, I agree with you. That is a
Yeah.
great way to make it year round. Also, I think you've seen this before. I think a lot of kids, when they invent something, they think that's the end. And, part of the engineering design process is that you continue to remodel or reprototype or redesign to improve a product, and not just say that it's done. And that's a great way, even after a science fair or, an invention fair, to continue and make it all year round, is how to make it better and improve it. Question number 4, and I love this one, whoever did this, because I'm assuming, maybe, I don't know, with how many countries you've been to and how many workshops. Have you ever worked with Russian scientists or students in Russia? If so, what did you find most useful about that experience for you or for them?
I have worked with students in Russia, actually. I haven't worked with scientists there. But I've worked with students there over Zoom. I haven't had the chance to visit. But one I think one of the things, and it's difficult because I've done so many to kind of isolate every single workshop and remember what I learned. But I'll kind of give you a generic thing that I kind of remember, especially from, I would like to say, like Eurasia as a whole, every kind of country that I've worked with there. These students are provided like incredible access to education as well. The students that I worked with did go to a great school and things like that. But they wanted to do more. They wanted to do more, and that's what I really got out of them too. I've never worked with a student who said they didn't want to change the world. And so I think one of the biggest things that I've kind of learned from most of these students is recognizing that everyone has a very distinct way of learning and everyone has a very distinct way of problem solving, but it's all towards one common goal. And it's kind of exciting and it keeps me on my toes for how we're essentially able to foster it, right? And my techniques for how I teach students in Russia are so different from how I teach students in a private school in New York versus how I teach students in South Africa, right? And so it really does challenge me, but every student learns differently in every single one of these countries. Their languages are different. There's always a barrier. It's kind of just figuring out how you're going to adapt to that and how you're going to change and grow with that. But every student that I work with genuinely inspires me in a different way, and I truly do mean that. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, speaking of my generation, I just, started talking without unmuting myself. But our last question is, in your opinion, which emerging skills such as like AI literacy, sensors, or data storytelling are most important for teens? Maybe that is for them to learn, or also, for them to have right now as a resource for school or as a tool.
I really like that you brought up AI literacy. I think that's one of the big things that's going to absolutely change the way we take on the world. Um, as we know, we've watched the horror movies about AI, but we've also watched the great things about it as well. I feel like learning how to utilize artificial intelligence is going to be something that we really need to prioritize in these next couple of years, especially for students. I mean, it's an art within itself, and it's going to be many of our jobs in the future too. But kind of alongside that, I also think that um, like critical thinking is a big thing as well when it comes to managing time, managing social media, managing just figuring just life skills, you know. Sometimes, you're able to do school and you're able to be really good at school, but you lose track of things that make you as a person. And it's really easy to get into your own head. And I think that's something that I really want to be able to tackle is in addition to kind of AI literacy and figuring that out. Another big part for teens is being able to manage things like your time, your mental health, and things like that as well. Adolescent like health is just as equally important as being able to learn and grow as an individual.
Yeah, well, wow. I feel like I'm gonna leave inspired by you to look into coffee beans and look into like professional development. And I don't know, I think I might be, ending up in one of your workshops
But as you
as
should.
an educator. Yeah, looking to read one of your books. I mean, it's just amazing. And you're not done. And, I hope you don't mind me asking and letting the audience know you got 2 years left and you are currently 19. When is your birthday, or is it soon? Are you going to be 20 soon, or
November. It's
November?
quite
Okay.
far,
So,
but
yeah. So, but it's just inspiring. I mean, you've got a whole career uh,
thank you.
left, and I don't think you're done yet. I mean, in any of the fields that you talked about, and honestly, the type of personality you have, I wouldn't be shocked if you dabble in something else, in the STEM field. Um, you know, is there anything that you want to leave as a final note to audience members or anything while we have these last couple minutes?
Yeah. I guess the last thing I would say is we're living in really interesting times where newer technologies are shaping our future, right? And it's important to kind of harness them and take advantage of them now more than ever. And I like to say that everyone has to play a part in the world that we want to build in the future. So whether that's picking up trash on the side of the road or creating a life-changing solution for climate change, anything matters. So play a role. That's all.
I love that. Play a role.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Future t-shirt, I don't know, future workshop.
Yeah, future book, maybe another one, third.
Maybe another book, Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you for your time. I know you've got a busy schedule. School's about to start. I don't know if you moved in or no, you're not there yet, right?
Not yet. Still home in Colorado. Thank God.
All right. Well, yeah, enjoy the last couple of days of summer. And to our audience members, we want to say thank you, for being here. And we appreciate your questions for today or for tonight. And, hopefully in the future, you'll be at one of Gitanjali's workshops or read one of her books and be inspired to invent or continue your pathway in STEM. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. And thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.